Hi there, I'm Nathan Agan. Welcome back to the Working Actors Journey Rehearsal Room. We have been working on Act 1, Scene 1 of Hamlet this month. Hopefully, you've been following along. We are going to reserve a little bit of time at the end for questions and comments of the artists and the audience. We'd love to hear what people have learned and discovered about this scene as we've spent these 8 hours just really spending time on just this part of the play. If you're watching this later on YouTube, hit that like button, hit that subscribe. Come on back. We're hoping to do a lot more of this. And I will say that even though tonight is the final session of this scene, this what you're going to see is not necessarily meant to be a final performance. It's not locked in place because, of course, as even these artists have talked about, once they get it up on their feet, things may change. Dynamics in relationships. All this work will inform, of course, the next step. But this is just a continued work in progress. So we will continue posting the weekly sessions on YouTube for free for everybody to enjoy. So again, subscribe so you hear about all that. Click for notifications. You can still support the project via Patreon and get early access to some of the sessions that we've been releasing. And a quick thank you to some of our patrons, Evar, Joan, Michelle, Jim, Magdalene, Claudia, Cliff, and Jeff. With that, I will turn it over to the group because I know there's still a lot to explore, and have a great session.
Thank you, Nathan.
Thanks, Nathan. Okay, so, 2 hours at first seemed like a long time. And now I look at it and I think, wow, now it's going to be an hour and a half with a half hour at the end. And it's a funny thing, for Randy and I discuss this play all week long. We say goodbye to you on Tuesday and then we just keep going at it. Because so much starts to show up. The reason I did that summary is not because I thought you were incapable of understanding what happened, but I wanted you to see how much happens in this tiny scene in the beginning of the play. And because at least it startled me to think that when I started to break it down moment to moment to moment to moment, it goes by so fast. So whatever we can get from it, we have to somehow infuse the work or the scene with all of the life that Shakespeare's given us the clues to. We also, and Randy may want to address this either now or later, but we also talked about how sometimes we can get caught in the weeds with the intellectual. And so what that tends to do is to make our choices careful, well thought out, and it restrains the emotional reaction to things. And it doesn't allow the play to live. It just makes it, we keep searching for something that's right. I think we've all come to the understanding that there's no right. There's this play. I think I told you when we were at the Guthrie Theater, we learned that every 12 days, something new was published about Hamlet. I don't know what those statistics are today, but I know that there's quite a bit out there, and there's so much controversy, so much disagreement, that you can't, anybody who thinks they got it, I think they have to have their head examined, or they don't really understand just how complex this work is. They also, I believe, don't understand why this play has lasted. This playwright has put the mystery into the play. He hasn't said, this is the way it is. He shows you different facets of the ghost. He shows you different responses to the ghost. He shows you different responses to any of the situations in the play. And he says, you decide. I'm holding the mirror up because it's going to say more about you as an audience member than anything that I can say about you. I think sadly today, or sadly is not the right word, but I think a lot of times what productions try to do today, and I think it's the best intentions, they try to tell you what you should be feeling and thinking. But I don't think this playwright works that way. I think he's so brilliant because that's why they've lasted. And every 12 days, something new is published, because everybody who comes to it will bring something of themselves to it. Terribly exciting. Amazing way to work on a play. Tough for directors. I think I may have said this earlier on. Randy and I had a discussion. We were teaching this play to a group of non-actors, and I was showing them all of the possibilities, this possibility. And Randy said, it's this. And I said to him, how can you be so sure? And he said to me, I'm an actor. And in the moment, there's only one choice. Then I can examine it and come back with a different choice. But that's the way I have. So we've had this relationship where I can take out choice after choice after choice and have the card catalog of that. But as the actor, he has to make that choice. So at any rate, I think that what we've started to discover, it just grows and grows. We've learned a lot more since the last time we met than anything that we've learned before. I'm hoping you're having that same experience. I thought today the best way to approach the day was to just read the scene first, so that we're all together on that. Have a discussion. I would like to bring up the ghost. Have a discussion, and then at least have one more reading of it before we end this session. How that'll fit into the timing, I'm not sure. And if I don't shut up, we won't have any time. So let's start with a reading of it. And what I'm going to ask you guys to do is, Nick, I'm going to ask you to do Francisco this time. And Ben, I'm going to ask you to do Barnardo, Randy, Marcellus, and Lee, Horatio. And I know now everybody has done a little bit of everything. So, but this is the order that I'd like to hear it in for this reading. Okay? Whenever you're ready.
Who's there?
Nay, answer me. Stand and unfold yourself.
Long live the king.
Barnardo,
He.
you come most carefully upon your hour.
'Tis now struck 12. Get thee to bed, Francisco.
For this relief, much thanks. 'Tis bitter cold, and I'm sick at heart.
Have you had quiet guard?
Not a mouse stirring.
Well, good night. If you do meet Horatio and Marcellus, the rivals of my watch, bid them make haste.
I think I hear them. Stand! Who's there?
Friends to this ground.
And liegemen to the Dane.
Give you good night.
Farewell, honest soldier. Who hath relieved you?
Barnardo has my place. Give you good night.
Hola, Barnardo.
Say, what is Horatio there?
A piece of him.
Welcome, Horatio. Welcome, good Marcellus.
What, has this thing appeared again tonight?
I have seen nothing.
Well, Horatio says 'tis but our fantasy, and will not let belief take hold of him touching this dreaded sight twice seen of us. Therefore I've entreated him along with us to watch the minutes of this night, that if again this apparition come, he may approve our eyes and speak to it.
Tush, tush, 'twill not appear.
Sit down a while, and let us once again assail your ears that are so fortified against our story, what we 2 nights have seen.
Well, sit we down, and let us hear Barnardo speak of this.
Last night of all, when yon same star that's westward from the pole hath made his course to illume that part of heaven where now it burns, Marcellus and myself, the bell then beating 1.
Peace, break thee off. Look, where it comes again.
In the same figure, like the king that's dead.
Thou art a scholar. Speak to it, Horatio.
Looks it not like the king? Mark it, Horatio.
Most like. It harrows me with fear and wonder.
It would be spoke to.
Question it, Horatio.
What art thou, that usurpst this time of night, together with that fair and warlike form in which the majesty of buried Denmark did sometimes march? By heaven, I charge thee, speak!
It is offended.
See, it stalks away.
Stay, speak! Speak! I charge thee, speak!
'Tis gone, and will not answer.
How now, Horatio? You tremble and look pale. Is not this something more than fantasy? What think you on't?
Before my God, I might not this believe without the sensible and true avouch of mine own eyes,
Now, is it not like the king?
as thou art to thyself. Such was the very armor he had on when the ambitious Norway combated. So frowned he once, when in an angry parle he smote the sledded Polacs on the ice. 'Tis strange.
Thus, twice before, and just at this dead hour, with martial stalk hath he gone by our watch.
In what particular thought to work, I know not. But in the gross and scope of my opinion, this bodes some strange eruption to our state.
Good, now sit down, and tell me, he that knows, why this same strict and most observant watch so nightly toils the subject of the land, and why such daily cast of brazen cannon and foreign mark for implements of war, why such impress of shipwrights, whose sore task does not divide the Sunday from the week. What might be toward that this sweaty haste doth make the night joint labor with the day? Who is that can inform me?
That can I. At least the whisper goes so. Our last king, whose image even but now appeared to us, was, as you know, by Fortinbras of Norway, thereto pricked on by a most emulate pride, dared to the combat. In which our valiant Hamlet, for so this side of our known world esteemed him, did slay this Fortinbras, who, by a sealed compact, well ratified by law and heraldry, did forfeit with his life all those his lands which he stood seized on to the conqueror, against the which a moiety competent was gauged by our king, which had returned to the inheritance of Fortinbras had he been vanquisher, as by the same covenant and carriage of article design his fell to Hamlet. Now, sir, young Fortinbras, of unimproved metal, hot and full, hath in the skirts of Norway, here and there, sharked up a list of landless resolutes for food and diet to some enterprise that hath a stomach in it, which is no other, as it doth well appear unto our state, but to recover of us by strong hand and terms compulsive those foresaid lands so by his father lost. And this, I take it, is the main motive of our preparations, the source of this our watch, and the chief head of this post-haste and roamage in the land. But soft, behold, lo, where it comes again. I'll cross it, though it blast me. Stay, illusion. If thou hast any sound or use of voice, speak to me. If there be any good thing to be done that may to thee do ease and grace, to me speak to me. If thou art privy to thy country's fate, which happily foreknowing may avoid, oh, speak. Or if thou hast uphoarded in thy life, extorted treasure in the womb of earth, for which they say you spirits oft walk in death, speak of it. Stay and speak. Stop it, Marcellus.
Shall I strike at it with my partisan?
Do, if it will not stand.
'Tis here.
'Tis here.
Oh, 'tis gone. We do it wrong, being so majestical, to offer it the show of violence, for it is as the air, invulnerable, and our vain blows malicious mockery.
He was about to speak when the cock crew.
And then it started, like a guilty thing upon a fearful summons. I have heard the cock, that is the trumpet to the day, doth with his lofty and shrill-sounding throat awake the god of day, and at his warning, whether in sea or fire, in earth or air, the extravagant and erring spirit hies to his confine. And of the truth herein, this present object made probation.
Yeah, it faded on the crowing of the cock. Some says that ere 'gainst the season comes wherein our Saviour's birth is celebrated, the bird of dawning singeth all night long. And then they say no spirit can walk abroad. The nights are wholesome. Then no planets strike, no fairy talks, no witch hath power to charm. So hallowed and so gracious is the time.
So have I heard, and do in part believe it. But look, the morn in russet mantle clad walks o'er the dew of yon high eastern hill. Break we our watch up, and by my advice let us impart what we have seen tonight unto young Hamlet. For upon my life, this spirit, dumb to us, will speak to him. Do you consent we shall acquaint him with it, as needful in our loves, fitting our duty?
Let do it, I pray. And I this morning know where we shall find him most conveniently.
Good, good. I think we've made strides. I mean, I think that the fear is coming out, the description of what you're seeing. The question now, well, let me open it up to you guys first. What have you discovered in the scene that perhaps you didn't know before, or I know one of the things, of course, that everybody probably struggles with is that Horatio speech about Norway. And a lot of times it's cut out, but it really is important to the rest of the play and to Fortinbras coming back. When we did a production of it in Hawaii, we the director cut out Fortinbras completely. And then Randy and I went to visit the schools after the production, and these kids said, "That was great, but why'd you cut out Fortinbras?" And so we thought, okay, well, we're not touching that anymore. But it is a tough speech, and I think it's tough because well, let me open that up to you. Does anybody else find it as tough as I find it?
I do, but I was just thinking, we were just talking about another great play that I like, which is Lear, and I think a lot about just how different obviously audiences must have been back then, because so often Shakespeare gives you a tremendous amount of extremely important information that you need to know in the first 10 lines of the show. It just happens so quick. And I think I think if those plays were written today, that's not what we're used to. You got to do something to grab our attention first, and so a lot of directors will add something to the beginning of Lear, or add something to a lot of plays to sort of get your attention, so that you're paying attention when the third line talks about the division of the kingdom and no one's listening. We're still getting acclimated. It just strikes me how good Hamlet is, in that Shakespeare gives you the spectacle. He sets up this little creepy thing, but then you get the first appearance of the ghost where he doesn't speak, which gets you curious enough to listen to this speech. I think if done well, that's what I'm really learning, because again, I'm used to this just being cut almost automatically.
Yeah.
And so it's interesting to hear, and I go, oh, I actually think that you can, without adding anything, get the audience to listen to this in a way that I think Shakespeare does a favor to a modern audience in a way that he doesn't in some of his other plays, where they're really just, they start with such a bang and you're like, wait, I haven't gotten used to the language yet or something. This is a great, I think, bringing that ghost on, which of course is what we're missing. That thing that tells everybody to pay attention.
Yeah. I want to also point out something, and you guys can tell me as actors whether it helps or not, but I think that one of the things that's important about that speech is that this is not firsthand information that he has. This is a rumor. This is a whisper. I've heard this. This is the story that's being told. So I don't believe you have to invest too much emotionally or have a point of view about it. And I think that's what will make the information clear, that this is what the talk is. And so Shakespeare, by making it a rumor, I think has taken us off the hook from allowing it to be emotional or somehow agitated or whatever. And you didn't do it that way, Lee, but I just want to add that little element to it, is that when you're telling somebody a rumor, this is what I heard the other day. I heard that Randy doesn't like Shakespeare at all. He just did it because, so I'm not invested in it. I'm saying what somebody else said. Just think about that for a minute and see if
Yeah, I
that.
think that's good. Another thing about that is that, well, two things. Of many that are notable to me, that speech begins after "Now sit we down," right? And there was a previous moment where Barnardo said, "Sit down and tell me he that knows." And they begin to sit down, and it's interrupted by the ghost.
Yeah.
And now it's like, now, all right, now let's really sit and be at ease. So if the speech does have that quality you're talking about, then we're kind of not only getting all the info, but prepared to be jerked into Ghost City again.
Yes, and I'm glad you
Yeah.
bring it up, because here's the other thing that I think gets forgotten. When the ghost leaves the first time, there's no expectation that the ghost is coming back. We play it because we know the play. And so that becomes something we're expecting him to come again. It's done. 'Tis gone and will not. We did not get what we needed to get. And so we can now, as you say, we can now sit down and discuss further what the ramifications of all of this mean, because nobody's on guard. Now, the first time Marcellus is watching, because his expectation is that the bell will beat one and the ghost will come. There's no expectation for the ghost to return. And so there's a difference in how you can approach this next section of the play.
Also, too, with regard to that, if they figure that the ghost, oh, he's left, he's gone, what the guys are trying to do is figure out what's going on.
Yes.
What's happening? The dead king has come back in armor. They're arming for war. They're doing all this stuff, but nobody knows why. So they're in the process of trying to figure out what's happening, what's going on.
Yeah.
And all this figure does is to arouse the question of what's happening in our society, what's happening in the kingdom.
Yes, and as you do that, you're setting a curiosity up for the audience.
Sure.
They want to know too what's going on. So that's why you're getting these different points of view. And that's why I think you have the whisper goes. So you have Marcellus, who has no information. We've been told that Francisco is sick at heart, that there's all of these clues of something's rotten in Denmark, or at least something is disturbing everybody, and nobody's giving answers. There are no answers in this first scene. They're just observations. And this ghost. I thought it was interesting also that no one mentions ghost or king in the first part before the king enters. So that's called this dreaded sight. It's called
Apparition.
this thing. Yes. So what happens is you guys have not gotten into the conversation yet in front of the audience about the ghost. That will help Horatio's response to that ghost, because when that ghost comes in, it's the very first recognition of it, even audibly. We have not heard King. No discussion has taken place. It's all about the cold night that Francisco fills us in, the agitation of Barnardo to ask who's there when he should be reporting, the idea of it not a mouse stir. It's quiet, it's cold, it's dark. He sets the scene up beautifully, and then the ghost enters. And that's why I think you need that one. That's why I think that enter ghost comes where most modern scripts have moved it. They have the ghost come in with Marcellus saying, peace, break thee off. The folio has it after that. And what's wonderful about that is he interrupts that conversation that Barnardo and Horatio are having, So everybody's attention is on the ghost. It doesn't overlap with these guys talking a little bit. The ghost comes in, he sets it up so the ghost makes the entrance. Look where it comes, and that long spelling on look where it comes again. And now they can discuss what it looks like. Does that make sense, everybody? I mean, I know that it may sound little, but it never occurred to me before that no one mentions the ghost until the ghost comes in. Then they start to talk about, I think it's the next movement of the scene, is now we have the actual dreaded sight that we've been talking about, and the men now have to get to the bottom of it. The other thing I think that's interesting, and I'm going to hope you guys did it, and if not, I hope this enhances it, is that Horatio is not doing anything. He's been asked several times, look at it, mark it, Horatio. It would be spoke to, question it, Horatio. All those four things happen before he actually can pull himself together enough to do what he was brought there to do. So it's quite a wonderful moment of, and it will go back to Barnardo's, you tremble and, isn't this more than our fantasy? Because it shocks, it shocks Horatio what he's seeing. Yeah, Lee.
To that point, when he says, most like it harrows me with fear and wonder, no punctuation, no period, which one way I interpreted that was him receding, backing up. So most like it harrows me with fear and wonder, it would be spoke to, do that. And so they have to retrieve him with those short lines.
I
Is
think
one
you're
way
absolutely right, because what
interpret.
happens is you start to see this has that punctuation has the possibility of staging it for us.
Yeah.
If you follow, but it's
giving us
interpretive.
ideas.
There's not one way. It's interpretive, but it does give you these wonderful clues. It's like that semicolon. You have that speak, colon, speak, semicolon. Why does he drop down? What could it be? Well, here's our job. Imagination. Here's where we fill in the details, the life, not the details. Fill in the life of it. Maybe he stops and looks. We're told that he looked at Horatio constantly when he meets with Hamlet later on. Most constantly, he says, where's that moment in this scene when we can go back, we go on to the scene with Hamlet, and things are described that happened that we have no lines referring to them in this scene. Now the ghost, what is the ghost doing? When is he doing it? When is he sorrowful? When is he angry? Because all of that is said about the ghost, and we now we don't have a ghost. But that's what we have to start to fill in the scene itself. I think it's thrilling. I said to Randy this morning, is there a film? Can anybody think of a film where the ghost is portrayed with all of that happening? Because it almost feels like you could do it on film with a wonderful close-up of the ghost doing all of those things. Randy couldn't think of one that he remembered that had that. Of course, we have to do it on stage, so we don't have the close-up. But we do still need those moments between these men and the ghost if it's going to have any worth when they meet Hamlet later on.
One thing just occurred to me too.
Yeah.
They've seen this ghost twice before. It has not menaced them. It has struck fear in them, but it has not threatened them. You know what I mean? So
yes, and they're left with the image of someone they respected, being majestical. Yes. We do it wrong to offer it violence. That's the one thing they don't come to the final conclusion that this is a benevolent spirit. All they're coming to a conclusion is that Horatio lets them know this is something that Hamlet. I don't know. He says, I have no specific conclusion that I can come to. But in my opinion, in my broad opinion, this bodes something
strange
wrong.
eruption.
Well,
Yes.
and that's the thing that I hear so clearly, especially when I'm reading from the Barnardo point of view, is that which again, I just think the scene is often glossed over very quickly in a lot of productions where there is Horatio is asking them to make a decision that is breaking a normal chain of command.
Yep.
Absolutely.
There's definitely a sides being taken. And I feel like that I often miss that moment.
Yep.
But the idea that it's like, hey, my advice is actually don't report this to the commander of the watch. Instead, let's go talk to the prince who didn't get the throne and all of that, which we'll know later on, that there's actually a little more
Which in and of itself is a
partisanship here.
juicy thing
Yes.
to invest in the
Yes.
playing of.
Yep.
Yeah.
Which is why I would suggest to all of you also to take a little more, let's find the timing of that very last moment, because you're right, Ben, I think it is glossed over sometimes, but I think that Horatio's asking these men to do something quite dangerous. It's one thing, the first dangerous moment, big dangerous moment here is, I'll cross it though it blast me. That is, and I think on stage, of course, you would take that time to stand in front of that ghost and take, so there's the first one. But this last moment of, do you agree that this is something that we are duty bound to do, but they have to agree. He's asking for them to agree with him because he knows that the stakes are high. And look, when we do get to that next scene that we read last week, they're not coming into a full court. They're waiting till that court exits. You almost feel them hovering about somewhere, waiting for that to happen, so they can then move in to talk to Hamlet. The other thing is, I always find it interesting. Again, this is stuff you have to carry. It's not stuff the audience, we're not going to give it all to the audience. But one of the things that I've always felt is, Barnardo would love to say to Francisco, I saw a ghost. Did you see a ghost? That is not the conversation they have, because this thing has to be kept a secret. They have decided, Barnardo and Marcellus have decided that the only one they're going to share it with is the one man they believe has the power to exercise it should it be a demon, the man who is a scholar. And what that comes down to is two things. It comes down to scholarly meant the ability to talk to ghosts, but it's not a tea time. It's not hi ghost, how are you? What did you do last week? It's the reason that they would learn what to do was because if it was evil, you wanted to get rid of it. It wasn't something that if it were a good spirit, it would be bathed in white light. It would be saying benevolent things. It would, so only Horatio could have some information to clarify the presence of this ghost and what the different signs mean. Yeah, so anything else that anybody has noticed? I think it's also interesting. There's been no war that King Hamlet has been engaged in for 30 years. There's been peace. And I say that because that's the armor he wore then. The suggestion is that it has a connection to the Fortinbras somehow.
Yes.
Now, we
And
do know,
Horatio makes the connection.
yes, that's right. And he saw it. Now, if we believe that Hamlet, we believe the gravedigger, then Hamlet is 30 years old. And it happened, after the death of old Fortinbras, then Horatio should be older too. Now, I'm not saying, 80 years old, but I think that he's been closer to the ghost in the ghost's lifetime and at the time that he fought with Norway. So I think the idea that I just watched a snippet the other day on YouTube, and the Horatio was about 17 or 18. Now, I don't know, because I've been with the play so long, if I'm just prejudiced. I have to say it's that it wears on you. I have to say that I've been around and had certain conclusions about it. But boy, it didn't fit right to have a young man like that sort of take these other men under his wing and say, let's sit down and you talk. It just seemed like somebody who was somehow older or more experienced, let's at least say.
Well, if you say that Horatio's younger and he's just speaking about a battle that he was not at, and it's like secondhand information, you lose the punch of it. You lose the punch of the story. Whereas if it's somebody who's actually was there, saw it, it makes it personal, and it makes the facts more tangible, something that you can accept. And later he'll say, I knew your father. These hands are not more like. So he's like proof positive of the identity of this figure, I think.
Yeah. Again, you make those
But
decisions along the
sure.
way. It's one of those things, I always find that once you get into battles over this stuff, and although I have to say, with all the stuff I've been reading lately, I say let the scholars duke it out if they want. I don't even care to get into it. I want to grab from them their knowledge from all of the stuff that they've studied. But the stage belongs to us. The
Yes.
stage is ours. Some of you know John Wyatt, who was our translator at APT and knew so many languages. There wasn't any he couldn't learn within 2 weeks. And I once said to him, how can you be so sure of things? And he said, because I know 2,200 years of history by heart. But at one point, he and I got into an argument because he said that the theater belongs to scholars, that the theater is not, that plays belong to scholars, that the theater is not considered a primary place to study plays. And he ended up directing at APT and throwing that out the window, because he then went on to teach based on what actors, how he started to teach the plays, because he learned from APT, the work we were doing at APT, that indeed plays belong to actors, which is why, I won't dwell on it, but which is why we have to respect and understand our responsibility. We are working with a masterpiece. We are working with a masterpiece. And the unfortunate part of it is it's words on a page, but it's nonetheless a masterpiece. We tend to use it. I remember once the story of Stella Adler, who somebody was in class and she said, Stella said, who is Hamlet? And the kid said, Hamlet's a guy like me. And she said, get out of my class and don't ever come back. Hamlet was not a guy like you. He owned Denmark. And she came to it with such a respect for the playwright and the play, and trying to get across to actors, once you have taken on the job, you have a huge responsibility. So that's why we're taking this time with, yes, it's going to go by very fast on stage, but what you guys already have done have brought a life to it and an importance to it that I've rarely seen. So I think it's well worth the work. Sandy Ernst, do you have anything you want to add?
Well, it's interesting. You were just talking about Horatio's age again, because I couldn't help thinking when I'm just watching up here and listening that how interesting it is if he is the same generation as Claudius and Gertrude rather than Hamlet. And it's just an interesting thing that's never. And the other thing is that I've never thought of, because like Ben said, it's, you just sort of like they cut and chop the scene and it happens so quickly, blah, blah, blah. And we talked about it a little bit. We talked about the ages of Francisco and Barnardo and Marcellus, but I've never thought of it before. I've kind of been questioning the social and military hierarchy when they're not just interchangeable young soldier guards, that there is like I said, a hierarchy in both societal, but also like almost military wise, it seems to me. I don't know what it is exactly. I don't know, is Francisco and Bernardo or the set. It's just a question that has never come to my mind before, that has come up because of this reading.
I think, Sandy, if you conceive of a world that's medieval, maybe 9th, 10th, 11th century, you don't have armies as we know them, faceless men who are part of your army, that they were still individuals, although they were part of an army, or warriors. So there's that kind of thing. That's why when we talk about Denmark in this play being a nation or a country, a kingdom is better. What's happening in the kingdom, you know? And we're all involved in this kingdom.
Something that occurred to me lately, and I know that this may change everything, or is that, Marcellus does not know Francisco, doesn't refer to him by name, he calls him soldier. Barnardo knows Francisco. I'm wondering if they aren't closer in age, and that's why it's a little wonky in the beginning of "Nay, answer me, stand and unfold." That these two, what would happen? I guess I would ask the question, if you had these two younger guys keeping watch, and Marcellus brings in he's a more experienced soldier. He knows Horatio, so he's perhaps closer, at least into that age. But there's something about the beginning of it that Bernardo knows Francisco, and the way he talks to Francisco, "Get thee to bed, Francisco." And Francisco says, "Yeah, gee, thanks for this. It's so cold and I'm sick at heart. Hey, have you had quite?" It almost feels like a conversation of two equals, as opposed to somebody who is above someone else, just in terms of the, I don't know, the sound of them conversing with each other. I don't know. Again, like Sandy, it just occurred to me, what would happen if that happened? And then you have Marcellus coming in, because Marcellus, of course, does seem to carry a relationship with Horatio. So you feel like he's older. Again, all of this stuff worth trying, but it's all done to bring it to life, to somehow make it real for an audience, and not to make it right, to simply bring it to life so the audience is curious about what's going to happen next. Anything else? I don't know, Sandy Robbins, did you notice anything?
Well, many things. One is you and Randy distinguish between commas and semicolons, which is such a rich source of how to speak these lines, and completely ignored, as far as I can tell, in the American theater. But so that to me is one of the grosser outcomes of paying attention to that is you don't end a speech until it ends. And while that may seem a simple thing, it's what, for me, destroys most productions of Shakespeare, is they're chunked into little tiny phrases instead of these beautiful arias. Which not only are beautiful rhythmically and melodically, but tell the story and keep you on the edge of your seat because there isn't a conclusion. So that's one thing that's been very palpable for me. Another is how the end of this scene sweeps you into the next scene. It doesn't conclude anything. It's almost as if the curtain goes up. It brings the curtain up vocally. That's the other thing that I think is difficult to convey, but it's there, is that there are these military preparations, and the people preparing have no idea for what they're preparing or why. Right before I came on this call, I was watching CNN and some of the things in Los Angeles, and they interviewed a member of the National Guard whose face was, pixelated out. But it reminded me of this scene. He didn't know exactly what was going to happen. He's in a life and death situation. He does not know what's going to happen next, why his government has him there. I mean, it was, for me, emotionally such a parallel to the given circumstances that are the background here. But the last thing I want to say is that you said it, Annie, that the second appearance of the ghost is a complete surprise, and that's a rich dramatic possibility. We think it's over, and there's this, and it's got to be a big moment dramatically, that second appearance, and shocking and surprising. But it rarely is. It's almost always played by people who know that there's more to it. Anyhow, that's my 2 cents.
Yes, and I think too, Sandy, what's so amazing about that moment is the ghost has chosen to come back in spite of
Yes.
the mention of heaven, in spite of Horatio's demands on him. He still has just chosen to come back. That to me that's where I think we've got to see his face. We've got to see something that's happening that caused that to happen. Where is he? Is he looking directly at Horatio? Is
Mhm.
there, but I think it is a very, very important moment. And again, after all these years, we just realized it the other night when we said, they never expect him to come back. That's
No.
major,
No.
So
Yes, what a chance to surprise the audience. I mean, what a
Yes.
wonderful opportunity to just
Yes.
have people jump out of their seats 20 minutes into
He's
this thing.
back.
it's wonderful. There's so much in the scene that you read it and you think, wow. And a lot of it, I found there was one scholar, I forgot his name now, but he said at the very least, he mentioned something and he said, at the very least, you have to admit this is fascinating, knowing that it really had nothing to do. He couldn't give it to an actor and say, play it, but it was really, it's just like the other day when I was looking at the poleaxe, and some people think it means Polak because that's the way the Poles were referred to. But then if you look up what a poleaxe actually is, and it was a very knightly weapon that had the ability to break right through a shield, and it was
Cut through armor.
yeah. And so it had a prestige to it, and it didn't mean sledded, it meant sledged. It was sharp at the one end. It's quite different parts. So I think Lee would probably know more about it than what I read, but it became very exciting because also when you read the source material, the way that old Hamlet kills Fortinbras is by breaking through that shield of his. He breaks right through it and kills him. And then again is that idea of the kind of rage that he could be thrown into at any moment. The other thing too is that I think that line that Horatio has about this side
of the known
known
world. Yeah.
yes, that idea is that these men are shocked that this ghost comes back because peaceful spirits don't. You're sent to heaven when you're benevolent. We've talked about this. He didn't have any final rights. So whatever this purgatory is, and purgatory is a Catholic thing, but whatever it is, they're seeing something that has signs that surprise them. That's not how they knew this king. They knew the king, and as did everyone. It's like Gertrude. When you read again the source material, Gertrude was the most virtuous woman in the known world. So for this act that she does, for her to commit adultery or incest, to marry this quickly after her husband's dead, is shocking. It should be shocking to the court, which will also reflect on the court, but it would be shocking to everybody in Denmark that she allowed this to happen. So how do you work that into the play? Again, I think you just allow your imagination to take all of that in and see where you can, if you have that line that Horatio has in that parenthetical, that I'm saying this about him, but at least once there was a time he was known as noble or honorable, and then there's another pricked on by a most emulate pride. The whole point behind the battle between Fortinbras and old Hamlet was that old Hamlet was receiving an incredible reputation of brilliant piracy, and Fortinbras was jealous of it, and so he dared Hamlet to have this battle. And Shakespeare, of course, puts it into one line, but if you know that, you can fill that line with at least, the color that it brings to it. That source, when Nick said to me last week, he said, did you read Saxo Grammaticus? And I said to him, yeah, yeah, sure I did. And he said, I thought maybe you just kind of, looked at a footnote here or there, little bits of it. No, it's worth reading because there's so much in it. Even though it's in many ways there's no ghost, but there's some different things, but it does shed light on the world. It really helped us choose the world we wanted to set Hamlet in. I mean, we went back to a 12th century idea, not a Renaissance Hamlet,
Evil.
medieval. So anything else?
Well, I don't know if this is a can of worms that's worth opening. This is one of those things that, but I was just thinking about it, which is just what's the ghost's plan? And I don't know if those are worth getting into. I don't know. Those are things I don't always let myself go down sometimes because I'm not always sure that there's answers to that. But I don't know. I was just wondering, is the ghost's plan to stalk around this place until someone fetches Hamlet? Is that a weird thing to wonder? I mean, I know that it's like if you're doing a good job with the play, you might not ever wonder that. But I was just thinking about now that we're talking about Horatio, and I love the idea that Horatio is I kind of is the same is late 40s or something, early 50s, is the age of Claudius and Gertrude, and the idea that he has known the older Hamlet or something. It makes me wonder, does the ghost of Hamlet recognize Horatio? And then is that why he comes back? I always wonder what is the ghost going to do if no one ever talks to him? I mean, is it, is it good? Is it just haunt until I don't know. Just curious if anyone had any thoughts about that.
Liz Swain has her hand up. Yay, let's hear.
I do, because I have something I played the ghost for the LA Women's Shakespeare. So I had to make up my mind about a lot of things. He comes out, and so what I came to was he is definitely looking for Hamlet because Hamlet is the first person he speaks to. So he's looking for Hamlet. And then there's that heaven that sends him screaming out. But then but Horatio was there, and Horatio, he knows, is connected to Hamlet. And so that, I believe, is why he comes back a second time, again, hoping that at least Horatio will tell Hamlet, which is, of course, he succeeds in doing.
I totally agree with you. And I think that the only thing I would add to it is that we're told that he is doomed to walk the nights. So the actual walking of the night is something he has to do. Now, the association with where he's walking, certainly, it starts to, so I guess my point is that it starts off with an obligation and then something builds beyond that, and then it continues when he sees Horatio, certainly. And then that's because Horatio is the one who says, we have to tell Hamlet. The guys never once had that thought of, so yeah, I think that is what it is. I do have a question though for you, is when you played the ghost, what did you find about portraying the ghost moment to moment? Did you, or was, because as Sandy said earlier, a lot of productions kind of make him a general specter, that he travels through, he's spooky, whatever. But did you find anything beyond that?
I think, I mean, it was some time back. I played it definitely moment to moment on the text, which is the way I like to work. I hope I didn't have any general things going on. I mean, I listened to what Hamlet said and I explained to him what I had to tell him. And I then, judging by however he reacted, would condition what I would then say next. And when we got to the horrible, I mean, I'm trying to go back into my mind. Oh gosh, I'll have to look at all this again. But yeah, I mean, it's tough. You can't play a general ghost. And, and I did have this very clunky outfit on. And so and I'm very short, which is pretty funny for the ghost, but I had all this gear on and terrible face makeup and everything. And I think I just tried to connect to Hamlet was my main motivation once I got to see him.
Yes. Yeah. It's wonderful. I think that, well, Randy, you said you've always been fascinated by the ghost. Did you want to add
Yeah.
anything to the conversation about that? I mean,
No.
he's ready to play it. Obviously, he's played Hamlet 3 times, never played Claudius. In fact, only played Hamlet.
That's strange to think, Randy, that you haven't had a crack at any of the other ones. That's
No.
can I share my bizarre little my little theory about the ghost?
Go.
But I don't it's not a playable theory. I don't think it is. But it is, to me, there's the idea that the ghost needs connections to people to become able to speak. And so to me, the idea is the ghost is there, and but is there in less corporeal form almost, and then Horatio, somebody he has a connection to, brings more of him there, and that when Hamlet's there he's able. I just like that, because I always wonder why he doesn't. This is just something that came up when we were working on the show at one point. The idea that he doesn't appear to Gertrude I find interesting, because I feel like that connection's broken and lost. And I always like the idea that he doesn't have a voice until he's actually in front of his son, somebody that the idea that I don't know, I'm getting existential, but it's the idea that we have to participate in order for the ghost to be there. That there is that they are in part formed by our I don't know. I'm getting existential. I may dial it back. I thought I could land the plane on that, but I feel like I've lost the tower.
No, I think that I think I'm more simplistic. I think that's the difference. That for me, again, I'm curious now. My next step with the ghost, of course, would be to have a stage situation, because I'm finding that so much is said about the ghost that I've rarely seen in productions, including our own, that I think bring a kind of excitement and questioning to it for the audience that could be quite wonderful. I mean, I think we talked about this coming the second time. I think the response, if I started to make a whole list of all of the references that are made of this ghost, because I've been reading, there are many scholars who believe the ghost is evil. They've come to that conclusion. And of course, I don't like to come to any of those. I like, as Liz said, I like to go moment to moment to see, okay, it left on the crowing of the cock. We know that has some sense of it, of not being some kind of malignant spirit. But again, we have Hamlet's lines, there are more things in heaven and earth, Horatio. At the end of the play, Hamlet says, the rest is silent. So I don't think it's about making him one thing. I think what becomes exciting for me is to see him come to life through these different scenes that he's in, based on what's said about him. And that's why I bring up the whole idea of what he says to Hamlet about, because some people also feel that because he might be malignant, he might be lying to Hamlet. What I think is the important part of all of this is that Hamlet is going to go on a search. He's not going, I mean, and again, how emotional is that? To see a figure that looks like your father, and he's relating something about a man that you already hate, or a situation that you find repulsive, to not just jump on board, but to say, I've got to find the truth about what I'm being told by this suspicious figure, questionable figure. And then the play, I think that's the way the play unfolds, Ben. So I don't know if I'm answering, where you're going with it, but the proof is in the staging of it, when we actually get on our feet and try to bring it to life. I think that's the only way we would find out. Anybody else? Sarah, you said you had something. Sarah Mabes, she gone? Can she turn on her? You said you wanted to say something about the ghost.
Yes. So I was thinking about the ghost yesterday, and a thought came to me that we hadn't discussed, which was that even though he's in this full gear, and it's not the ghost with the sheet over its head, is the ghost still looking more of like a foggy haze of himself? Is he in full color? Is he a bright light? Is he really dim? Like what certain specificities about him come to play, and does it change throughout the show, throughout the play? Is it one, or throughout this scene, I mean, is there something where he starts out just as a quick shadow and then eventually starts to come into the light more, and then when they're saying speak to him and then he pulls away, does that color change? So my brain was going all over the place, and I just wanted to know what everybody's thoughts were, because I had a really I went off on a whole tangent with myself yesterday trying to figure out what this ghost looks like other than what he's wearing.
Sarah, we got to go back to approximately how it was staged originally. Daytime, okay?
Oh, yep.
No great special fantastic effects, but simplicity. You had another actor dressed up in armor playing a ghost. So it was by the sheer power of his acting and the responses of his fellow actors to him that conveyed to the audience, this figure is not human. You know? So it's the power of acting. I think.
It's where it starts.
It's simpler than where my mind went.
I think that Randy is right, but I think that in our theater situation today, you would find people adding something more to it. You know, you would be, unless you're in an outdoor theater, you would have a lighting situation, and that's not bad. That's not it's not like, oh no, if it's not Elizabethan, I don't want it. It's not that. But I think what you have to do is learn from that first production, because what can happen, and we've seen it happen, the ghost can disappear in the technical. So sometimes he's a white light, sometimes Hamlet is, I think the recent one, he was possessed, he takes over Hamlet's body, or something else happens that you don't want to sacrifice the importance of what he brings, which is that he looks like the king. And if you're going to modernize it, you're going to have to, I don't know, you're taking it on a different path. But I think the fact that he's in that armor, if you're going to keep all those lines in, that's a given to what we're seeing. When Horatio says he's pale, and I think that even Shakespeare might have put a little white paint on him to make something look a little more ghostly, but he's not sacrificing who the ghost is and the effect the ghost has on these people who are encountering it. Wouldn't it be wonderful to dream of being able to embody, as an actor, everything that the ghost is without that light, without that smoke machine, without that, and again, all of that can be wonderful, but you have to be careful what you sacrifice in telling that story to the audience, I think,
So that the look of the ghost isn't overpowering what's being done. And okay, yep, I understand.
Oh, yeah. Elizabeth, sorry. Oh, there's so many Liz's and Elizabeth. I'm sorry. Yes.
And I wasn't here last week, so I want to say something, but if it's you guys have already discussed it, then that's
do.
I would think that a big decision that needs to be made before working on the scene or working on this play is, back in Shakespeare's time, they were very religious and they were kind of fearful of the supernatural, and they believed in a world where there was an afterlife and ghosts were possible. But you could have a production where in the world of the play, none of them believe that ghosts are possible, have never seen one, do not believe, or maybe some of them do. Maybe Horatio is absolutely skeptical. Ghosts are not possible. It's not in the realm of possibility. And I would think that would be a really big first decision. Who does believe, who doesn't believe, or does everybody? You could even have a rehearsal where there's no way ghosts exist. And they may be the first people in the whole world and whole history of the world where somebody has come to from the afterlife. I think that would really change the way you do it.
I'm not sure I understand what you're saying.
Is if let's say you were doing Hamlet and it was set in modern times and
Yes.
nobody who's alive in this world of this play believes that people can come back from the dead and visit people and walk on the earth and speak. And if you believe that's not at all possible, but it happens, it's really earth shaking. But if you are in a world where, oh, my mom visits me all the time, it's very normal for ghosts to come back and visit. My mother comes back and visits me. I see spirits all the time. Is this the first time they've ever seen a ghost, or is this something that happens?
Well, I think it may be more than just belief in the supernatural or in ghosts, because the play hinges on a world understanding that the world is governed morally, that there's a there are moral issues at stake that Hamlet will have to wrestle with. You know, there's talk of heaven, there's talk of devil, there's talk of all of that. So if you remove that understanding of how they see the world, then you're creating a totally different play.
Right.
You know, so Hamlet is engaged. All these people, all the characters in the play are engaged in that kind of understanding of the world. That
This is
there
the
is an afterlife, that there is judgment, there is such a thing as conscience. You know, there is punishment for killing. All of that comes into play. Not just the ghost is just like the top of the iceberg. We get down to
But
it.
I think what you bring up is a point that I want to just make, and that is, there's a book called The Renaissance Hamlet, which tells you how an Elizabethan audience would have viewed this play, and it's packed with information of behavior and beliefs and so on and so forth. I would highly recommend it if anybody does Hamlet straight, Shakespeare's Hamlet. But what you're talking about is perhaps the very thing that an Elizabethan audience would have experienced, because most of them would not have seen ghosts. Most of them would have been like our own audiences today, where if a ghost comes on to a stage, we have a certain sense of, I mean, we do it with movies now. I think that that's our kind of supernatural scare. But I think that number one, I don't think you would be doing a different play, because the ghost is only one element of this play. What do you do with kingship? Because I know Hamlet's been done by a CEO playing somebody. So I would, I would have to say to everybody that it's not even in the cards that I would do a production like that. I know other people do. Great, but I've just been at this for so long and I feel it's been so neglected to see these plays the way they were written, not as museum pieces, but with the suggestions of kingship, of ghosts, of armor, all of those things that are Shakespeare's not just about the words. Shakespeare's about the world as well. So my feeling is that Hamlet is a prince, that the king, that old Hamlet was a king. And that's the story he wrote. If you want to take it on another path, it becomes a different story somehow. And I think it's much harder work personally to do that. But I think what you are bringing up is the desire for that moment of newness, that I'm reacting
which is wonderful.
to it, because that would have been the reaction that that's why it was so wonderful, because ghosts were discussed. But look at Horatio, he's a knowledge of ghosts, but he's saying it's not going to appear. There's no such thing basically as ghosts. But when he sees it, all of a sudden there is a ghost. And that's the only thing we have on that stage. It's not so much Marcellus has never seen a ghost. Barnardo's nobody's ever seen a ghost in this play. But when the ghost appears, we've all now just seen a ghost, the audience as well. And that's good enough for me. I mean, I find that equally exciting, to trying to fit it to our world. I think, what Sandy had said earlier about the news clip that he was watching, I just have to say, because I know this can be recorded for posterity, and I want every young actor and director and theater person to know These plays will tell, they are relevant. They will tell our story. And in fact, if you allow an audience to come in and see a play that they think is about kings and queens and has nothing to do with them, they will learn the lessons quicker than if you show Trump as Julius Caesar, because you just turned away half your audience. But if you show Claudius in all of his glory, and he's not Trump, he's Claudius, you will see almost every leader that you have seen before in every one of these plays. They don't need your help. If you think Shakespeare needs your help, you're going to have to tell me why he's been around 400 years and that something you've created is going to have that same longevity. I won't be around, but I doubt it's going to happen. So that's my, not to you guys, but I am saying that to anybody who hears this recording later on. We've got to get back to the play. The riches are in the play. The playwright knows better than us. He's lasted 400 years. Go to the Greeks, they lasted 2000. We, 76, nothing. I like to think it's old. No, nothing. So I've said it now. It's recorded. We can move on. Okay, what's next? Anybody else? What time is it? I don't work with time at all. Is there a time?
It's 10 after 5.
Oh, so we do have time. Shall we do it again?
Sure.
Oh, man. Sure.
At some point, I'd like to hear from Paul, and since we've opened it up, I'd like to hear from Paul, and I'd love to hear from Michelle. If you're, you don't want to, that's fine too, but it would be great to have your input. What's wonderful about these sessions, I think, and they're going to grow into that because some of you have agreed to move on with us, is that we will now become a group that really
is diving in
through the mission of really getting into the play and discussing it from all different points of view. And I like that. I like that there'll be some continuity. That's why I'm so grateful for those of you who are signing on to move ahead. Okay. Okay. So let's switch it up. I'm going to keep the young men, if you don't mind, because I'm kind of curious about the Francisco-Bernardo relationship, being young. And if you would both get into something that is not casual, if they're still keeping guard, but something that has to do with their ability to talk more comfortably with each other than they would a commanding officer. And let me just see where that goes. So Nick and Ben, I think it's fair to say you guys carry youth. So
I'll go on.
I'll take it, but I don't hear that very often. That's that's very relative.
Okay. So let's see. So then this time, Nick, try Bernardo, and Ben, take Francisco. Okay. And then let's switch Lee and Randy as well and see how far we get. And if any point you want to stop, we can stop and go from there. Okay. But I'm curious now with all this talk to see, it always has to come back to you guys acting it. And in the end, that's all we have.
Who's there?
Nay, answer me. Stand and unfold yourself.
Long live the king.
Bernardo?
He.
You come most carefully upon your hour.
It is now struck 12. Get thee to bed, Francisco.
For this relief, much thanks. 'Tis bitter cold, and I am sick at heart.
Have you had quiet guard?
Not a mouse stirring.
Well, good night. If you do meet Horatio and Marcellus, the rivals of my watch, bid them make haste.
I think I hear them. Stand! Who's there?
Friends to this ground.
And liegemen to the Dane.
Give you good night.
Oh, farewell, honest soldier. Who hath relieved you?
Bernardo has my place. Give you good night.
Hola, Bernardo!
Stay! What, is Horatio there?
A piece of him.
Welcome, Horatio. Welcome, good Marcellus.
What? Has this thing appeared again tonight?
I have seen nothing.
Horatio says 'tis but our fantasy. and will not let belief take hold of him, touching this dreaded sight, twice seen of us. Therefore I have entreated him along with us to watch the minutes of this night, that if again this apparition come, he may approve our eyes and speak to it.
Tush, tush, 'twill not appear.
Sit down a while and let us again assail your ears that are so fortified against our story, what we 2 nights have seen.
Well, sit we down, and let us hear Barnardo speak of this.
Last night of all, when yon same star that's westward from the pole had made his course to illume that part of heaven where now it burns, Marcellus and myself, the bell then beating 1.
Babes, break thee up. Look, where it comes again.
The same figure, like the king that's dead.
Thou art a scholar. Speak to it, Horatio.
Looks it not like the king? Mark it, Horatio.
Most like. It harrows me with fear and wonder.
It would be spoke to.
Question it, Horatio.
What art thou that usurps this time of night, together with that fair and warlike form in which the majesty of buried Denmark did sometimes march? By heaven, I charge thee, speak!
It is offended.
See, it stalks away.
Stay! Speak! Speak! I charge thee, speak!
'Tis gone, and will not answer.
How now, Horatio? You tremble and look pale. Is not this something more than fantasy? What think you on it?
Before my God, I might not this believe without the sensible and true avouch of mine own eyes.
Is it not like the king?
As thou art to thyself. Such was the very armor he had on, when the ambitious Norway combated. So frowned he once, when in an angry parle he smote the sledded poleaxe on the ice. God, 'tis strange.
Thus, twice before, and just at this dead hour, with martial stalk, hath he gone by our watch.
In what particular thought to work I know not, but in the gross and scope of my opinion, this bodes some strange eruption to our state.
Good, now sit down, and tell me, he that knows, why this same strict and most observant watch so nightly toils the subject of the land, and why such daily cast of brazen cannon, and foreign marked for implements of war, why such impressive shipwrights, whose sore task does not divide the Sunday from the week? What might be toward that this sweaty haste doth make the night joint laborer with the day? Who is that can inform me?
That can I. At least the whisper goes so. Our last king, whose image even but now appeared to us, was, as you know, by Fortinbras of Norway, thereto pricked on by a most emulate pride, dared to the combat, in which our valiant Hamlet, for so this side of our known world esteemed him, did slay this Fortinbras, who by a sealed compact, well ratified by law and heraldry, did forfeit with his life all those his lands which he stood seized on to the conqueror, against the which a moiety competent was gauged by our king, which had returned to the inheritance of Fortinbras had he been vanquisher, as by the same covenant and carriage of the article design his fell to Hamlet. Now, sir, young Fortinbras, of unimproved metal, heart and full, hath in the skirts of Norway here and there sharked up a list of landless resolutes for food and diet to some enterprise that hath a stomach in it, which is no other, and it doth well appear unto our state, but to recover of us by strong hand and terms compulsative those foresaid lands so by his father lost. And this, I take it, is the main motive of our preparations. The source of this our watch, and the chief head of this post-haste and roamage in the land. But soft! Behold! Lo, where it comes again! I'll cross it, though it blast me. Stay, illusion. Thou hast any sound? or use of voice. Speak to me. If there be any good thing to be done, that may to thee do ease, and grace to me, speak to me. If thou art privy to thy country's fate, which haply foreknowing may avoid, oh, speak. Or if thou hast abhorred in thy life extorted treasure in the womb of earth, for which they say you spirits oft walked in death, speak of it. Stay, and speak. Stop it, Marcellus.
Shall I strike at it with my partisan?
Do if it will not stand.
'Tis here.
Oh, 'tis here.
'Tis gone. We do it wrong, being so majestical to offer it the show of violence, for it is as the air, invisible, invulnerable, and our vain blows malicious mockery.
It was about to speak when the cock crew.
And then it started, like a guilty thing upon a fearful summons. I have heard, the cock that is the trumpet of the day doth with his lofty and shrill-sounding throat awake the god of day, and at his warning, whether in sea or fire, in earth or air, the extravagant and erring spirit hies to his confine, and of the truth herein, see this present object made probation.
It faded on the crowing of the cock. Some says that ever 'gainst that season comes wherein our Saviour's birth is celebrated, the bird of dawning singeth all night long, and then, they say, no spirit can walk abroad. The nights are wholesome. Then no planets strike, no fairy talks, nor witch hath power to charm, so hallowed and so gracious is the time.
So have I heard, and do in part believe it. But look, the morn in russet mantle clad walks o'er the dew of yon high eastern hill. Break we our watch up, and by my advice, let us impart what we have seen tonight unto young Hamlet. For upon my life, this spirit dumb to us will speak to him. Do you consent we shall acquaint him with it, as needful in our loves, fitting our duty?
Let's do it, I pray. And I, this morning, know where we shall find him most conveniently.
Good. What did you think of the two young guys in the beginning? I'm kind of liking it because all of a sudden the language felt comfortable. It felt at
Between them.
ease. You know, it didn't feel like I have to somehow make this a soldier. It felt like the two of you were two young guys who were keeping the watch and were able to share something that perhaps you couldn't easily share with you know, somebody of higher rank. That's just me. I liked it maybe because it was my idea, but I don't know. At any rate, I do want to point out a couple of things. I think there are moments that we need to take more time. I think when the ghost leaves the first time, allow that to really sink in, because it's seeming now the ghost is gone, 'tis gone. But I think vocally you were doing it, Lee, but I think actual physical time is needed before the next line comes in, to let that he's gone resonate. Okay. I think that's part. I think more time is needed also, Randy, when Horatio says, "I'll cross it though it blast me." Take a beat.
Okay.
Because I think what we were doing, if we were staging it, I would have Barnardo and Marcellus almost reach out to you to say, no, don't do that. You know what I mean? But it needs to be a moment.
Gotcha.
The other thing that occurred to me, and because I've been looking for it, is there is no direction for when the cock crows.
Yeah.
My feeling was that time, I almost want to hear the cock crow, the line before the last, and on that uphoarded treasure line, have the ghost respond, look around, guilt, you know, and then leave at the end of it. The reason I say that is the third line is pertinent. You know, can you read that third line of Horatio in the second encounter of the ghost?
or if thou hast uphoarded in thy life,
Or that, the
extorted,
one before.
if thou art privy to thy country's fate, which haply foreknowing may avoid, oh, speak of it,
And the
speak.
ghost starts to speak, and the cock crows. And all of a sudden, and so Horatio comes in right away with the as the ghost starts to leave.
Or if thou hast
Horatio comes
uphoarded in thy life, extorted treasure in the womb of earth, for which they say you spirits oft walk in death, speak of it. Stay and speak. Stop it, Marcellus.
Shall I strike at it with my partisan?
Do if it will not stand.
Good, good. And the only reason I say it is that's the connection. Thy country's fate. That's the importance of what he may be saying if he starts to lift his head to speak, that it's Denmark that he's somehow concerned about, as opposed to even though ghosts were known to bury treasure and then come back to use that treasure for good, so that they would their sins that they're suffering for would be taken away.
That
But
would have to be tried out in rehearsal.
yeah, absolutely. It just
with
occurred to
the,
me while you were doing it. Yes,
yeah.
Michelle.
You just answered a question I had, which was, why does he say first, you may know something of that our country's fate, which seems to be so important, and then he goes to something as mundane as, oh, do you have treasure
Yes,
hidden?
yes.
And I couldn't say, why would somebody like Horatio go and downshift like that? And you just came up with a perfect solution.
Well, I hope. I mean, I think Randy's right. I think once we get it on its feet, I think you start, but
Yeah.
again, we're featuring the ghost again, not the words. And I think that's what's so important about once that ghost enters, our audience's eyes are on the ghost. They are not going to watch Horatio and Marcellus. We've seen them, we've met them. We listen to them. And remember, we're on a thrust stage at the Globe. So that ghost is in a prominent position to be seen. And everybody in the audience, if you do our job right, should want to keep an eye on it for any sign that will explain to us who it is and what he's bringing into it. Yeah, Randy, go ahead.
What that does, bringing in the cockcrow before, or if thou hast uphoarded in thy life, bringing the cockcrow in there affects how that line is said.
Yes.
Then it becomes like no, is it this then?
Yes.
Right?
Yep.
And it
And
felt to
then-
me,
and
felt
what's
like the
interesting
ghost
is
was leaving.
Yes,
Yes.
yes,
Yeah, I
yes,
mean,
yes, yes.
yes. And I think
accelerated
the other
and-
thing to keep in mind, you don't have a partisan. Horatio has no weapon. So Horatio can't physically stop it the way he may make an attempt to move toward, again, we'd have to get it on its feet. But that's why Marcellus said, should I strike at it with my partisan? Because you don't have a weapon to do any kind of striking. That's why Marcellus got to be brought into it, and Barnardo. It's all those details, that staging it would help us learn more about it, of course. But in your mind's eye, you want to see what are the possibilities. And I was
Sure.
always taken with the fact that it never said the cock crows, and that we'd have to find that moment.
Where it happens.
Well,
Yeah,
and
Nick,
the Cordo sets it.
the what?
The Cordo sets it later.
Oh, it does, yeah.
It has it after, for which they say, you spirits oft walk in death. Then there's the stage direction.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's fine. I mean, again, I think that we'd have to bring it onto the stage to see this. There are there's two speeches in this first scene that are in the quarto that are not in the folio. And so the folio seems to want to cut to the action. I mean, there's a whole speech about Julius Caesar and when the ghosts were in the streets before Julius Caesar died. There's that in the quarto, and there's another speech that seems connected to what's happening. It's a speech after that. But again, I think the folio, what I've learned, and let me tell you, there are some decisions with the folio that are troubling, because there's no drama veal speech in the folio, and there's no how all occasions do inform against me. And this stuff, of course, has come down to us quite fame. I mean, some people come to just see how you're going to handle it. And, you know, so it's missing. But again, I think that we have to just try both and see what makes sense. I've always been like Michelle. I've always had that same question of that last line and the connection to the ghost coming back. And did it mean something to an Elizabethan audience? And apparently not, from what I've read. That's more important than the line before. But again, to think about it. Yeah.
Now, one of the things about the actor playing the ghost, the ghost doesn't mean to, is caught off guard by the cock crow.
Yes.
He's like has stayed too long, and so he's caught off guard before he has to disappear.
Yeah.
Before he can say anything. So it's almost a kind of panicky exit.
You know,
like I'm late.
well, and he started. So
Yeah.
that's a sudden move, started like a guilty thing upon a fearful summons, as if he was being called. But that's why
Yes.
all of a sudden I had this image of him hearing that, you know, somehow that
Oh
crow
my
meant
God.
something about where that he had to leave.
Yes.
You know,
Do you think the ghost was shoed in felt?
Yes.
Yeah.
Or something,
Yeah.
instead of clumping
Delicate
around on the
stratagem.
stage. Right.
Mhm.
I'm
Yeah.
sure they tried to make him as quiet as possible.
yeah.
But I bet that's really cool. You know, that's like
It is
old
cool.
world
Yeah, I think it's so
stagecraft.
cool. But here's what I thought of also was that when Francisco says, "I think I hear them," and Bernardo's frightened. So what is it that made him frightened? If you know, not that you should hear the ghost walk, but you know what I mean. He's having some kind of doubt about, is that should I hide somewhere?
Back out.
Shall I get out of? It's a tiny little thing. I think it's much better to have a quiet ghost, personally.
Yeah.
But it's not that kind of thing that every tiny little thing now starts to say, "Oh, why is that there?" You know, Nathan's here, everybody. Is that
Aha.
And I silently as the ghost, I just slide into the room.
It just slipped in.
No, I just wanted to kind of check in. I mean, the conversation and discussion has been fantastic. We can certainly talk more about people's experiences. If you want to talk more about the scene and you know, work different parts of it or read it again, we have time. It just kind of depends how you would like to use the time, Annie. What are your thoughts?
I love the discussion. So I think anybody I would love to continue that.
observation.
I think we've achieved certainly what I've been looking for. I love actors acting. I love actors acting, and I sort of bring actors to a point with all this information and to see the kind of, let's be correct about it, or let's just put on our, you know, a soldier hat or whatever, becomes very exciting. And you guys, now you're playing with each other, and that's going to come into play certainly with the next scene, because as we move forward, that's a monster compared to this. This is very short by comparison. Now we're going to meet Claudius, we're going to meet Laertes, we're going to meet Polonius,
Gertrude.
you know, and then of course Hamlet himself, Gertrude. So it's a much larger scene, but you can see, I believe, that this sets the tone for the play. I think the ghost sometimes has been relegated to something not quite as important as the ghost really is. He sets Hamlet on his path. So I think to have found out what we've found out in this scene certainly has initiated that. I agree with Sandy Robbins, when you said earlier, you can almost feel this scene. They leave and that court comes in, and it's so beautifully set up by Marcellus, who says, "And I know where we will find them today." And the image that you have is this entire court who comes in with clothing that is filled with some kind of color, gilt, certainly nothing that is indicative of a mourning, and this one black figure. And that's how we start the next scene. It's very, very exciting. So let me open it up to anybody.
Yeah. Yeah, I was going to say if any of the audience
Yes.
members, even if you've asked a question or a comment, if you have something else you want to come on camera and say it yourself, that's great. You can also put it in the chat or raise your hand, whatever you're comfortable with. Or you could always just email us your comments, questions later if that's more comfortable or more convenient based on where and how you're tuning in. But giving the audience a chance to think about that, I do wanted to ask some of the artists involved, like Ben and Lee and Nick, just because you all have had some experience with the play, either being in productions or playing it, or certainly reading it, being familiar with it. How this we've talked a little bit about it over the weeks, but what you have come away with in terms of just the experience of this scene, working on this scene specifically, if there are anything that surprised you or challenged you in a way that you hadn't considered. So I'll just kind of open that up to Nick and Ben and Lee.
Well, I'll say that, I mean, what's really interesting to me is, yes, I mean, I'd be just listening to reading the scene in such an in-depth way. I'm learning more about a play that, you think and as Randy and Annie have said, it's bottomless. You're just always finding new things. What I keep kind of puzzling on after these sessions end is sort of the practical application of certain things, because I have played my share of Bernardos in my day and, directed by some wonderful directors. But I'll tell you, you don't get a lot of time on a scene like this.
No.
And, and if you are one of those actors who maybe you've done all this work on your own and you bring it in, not everybody's all ears when you're trying to talk about it, because a lot of times, like, yeah, Bernardo, you are a small fish. Be quiet. We got other things to do, And so I look at a scene like this and I go, I've been in a lot of Shakespeare productions playing these roles, and I go, oh yeah, this is one of those scenes I go, man, I'm going to have a nightmare at tech, because that's when we're going to rehearse the hell out of this, is going to be tech because of the ghost. But there's probably not going to be any time for the pay or to really dig into the work we're doing, because again, you have so many hours in a professional rehearsal, and what's important by what gets worked on, and it's going to be a lot of Hamlet, it's going to be a lot of Gertrude, it's going to be a lot of and so I just find it interesting for me as actor and director, going, oh boy, how can you give your actors this much? Because this is a scene that I would look at and go, my God, what a fun scene to play. If you got four good actors that the smallest role in the scene, still a fun thing to do. But I don't always experience it that way in my professional experience. Sometimes these become scenes that feel very thrown together. And you sometimes feel like you get smacked down a little bit if you try to, hey, I'm Bernardo, I've got some thoughts, it can be, so it's interesting. I just find this, how can I then make my actors feel as much freedom as we felt doing this, but knowing that we don't have that much time for any one scene. That to me becomes I guess that's the trainer's, if you train your actors well enough, maybe they can get this work done. I don't know. It just turns into a lot of questions that I have about how to
What you're
apply.
talking about is why we started APT. We had those same questions. And so, our relationship was one that Randy was being hired in all these regional theaters, and I went along for the ride, and I was able, we almost developed a reputation. I was able to sit in on every rehearsal and every production of every play he was in. And do the work and then feed back to him, never interfering with the direction, by the way, just saying, basically, this is what I see. Is that what you're trying to achieve? But I think we started APT because there was not that time to really get into every scene. And we even had Randy had a 20-year schedule. Our hope was to give actors, and it didn't work out, but give actors their roles 2 years in advance. We were trying to do everything we could to instill the play and also make the play the center of whatever it is. Even, and I was highly not criticized, but we were looked at as foolish because I didn't take the position of director that has a concept and I pass that on. I was basically the eyes and ears of the company. We tried to create something that Randy and I had developed over a 10-year period. But we were looking for different ways, Ben, to do that. If you remember, I mean, you were only a little boy, but I think Lee must remember, and Sandy I know remembers, is that everybody had to look up every word. I mean, I have
Oh, I remember.
sitting around the table with dictionaries and so that everybody had to know every if and or but had to be looked up to know what was being said. But I think it comes with developing a company. I think it comes with developing a rep. It's not easy. It's definitely not an easy thing to do. I have to say, though, one of the things I learned from Jewel Walker was when he first came out to APT, he did a handstand, well, an arm on one arm. He balanced on one arm, and we were enthralled. Everybody in that room was like, "Oh my God!" And that's all he had to do to make us all believe anything this man says, I will follow. I think a director has to have that handstand there. I think you have to bring something into the room that says, look, I want to work with all of you, but this is what I know. And so, and not with an idea of, I know better, I know more, but I've done the work. You have to make the actors trust, because the time is too short to fool around. You have to make the actors trust that you are the guy to guide, or gal to guide. And I think that helps at least shorten the argument time. Unless you have, arrogant act, we come in all sizes and shapes. And so sometimes, you're stuck with that. But I think the work is so tough that in order to achieve what you're talking about, I think the guide has to be knowledgeable. I think you have to know the play, because then you can instill confidence in the actors that you can guide them well.
Well,
That's just
Annie, the other thing too, though, is that the play was created by a company.
yes,
With
absolutely
a
right.
masterful playwright, but a company who had been working together for years before this play was done.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we don't have such companies. I remember asking Peter Zeisler once whether it's possible to have a company, a repertory company, classical company, and he said no, it's not possible in our time because of the structure of the system, and the commerce of it, that you are not going to be able to keep actors together. Sandy, you may have run into that problem.
Well, he
Yes.
has kept them together, so.
Yeah, it's really difficult.
Yeah, Peter told me not to start our school because it was a
I know.
hopeless endeavor, and that
Yes.
I should just freelance direct and do my best with 4 weeks or 3.5.
Yeah.
Well, we're doing our best now in the 21st century with this crazy endeavor to create
I
some kind
know.
of rep company here. And what I love, Ben, the point you made, I'm hoping that maybe as a side benefit to these sessions is for those directors who might tune in, we're creating more perhaps compassionate and empathetic directors who go, I see you. I know we can't spend 4 hours on your scene, but I do want to hear your thoughts about your character. So maybe that'll be a side benefit. Yes, go.
About a company, the Russians are notorious for working a piece, over years. I know Annie and I went to see a production. I forgot the name of the
At
theater.
Lincoln Center.
Right. It was called Brothers and Sisters, and this company were amateur actors, but had taken like a year to work it. And their performance was so nuanced. They were so together. It was the
It was
most
8
incredible
hours too.
ensemble work that I'd ever seen,
Wow.
But if the structure of commercial theater is forcing us into creating plays in 2 weeks, 4 weeks,
right.
And it's not a real company because we're hired to be a company. So it's a make-believe company, really, artificially put together, not with people who want to be together and who want to work together, like Shakespeare's company, like Moliere's company. And that's the sad part of it, to my mind. But there you are. That's what we're stuck with, kind of.
Well, I do. This is all great conversation. I do want to also give a chance to Lee or Nick if you guys have any thoughts of your experiences of working on this, what you thought.
Um, today especially, I was um struck with how much I rely on the text. I really love the folio and that all that work. So that's kind of helped over the past weeks. But like in discussing, last week we were discussing it, and this week too, just about like the circumstance and the ghost and all that. Is that the folio can't make you scared of ghosts,
That's right.
and all that. There's it gets choppy when it's the three of them. Tis here, tis here. And that's there, but there's no. I'm looking for a colon to make me really scared of a ghost, and it's just not there. Um, so having all this discussion has been a lot of fun, just like setting that before we jump into it.
Yeah. I think the points Annie brought up about this character that we just haven't had on screen with us, it just adds so much. There's it would be like doing any of the Hamlet scenes without Hamlet. That it's hard to really experience it without that character there. It's a great point, Nick. That yeah, you have to create more in your own head. You can't you got to take that text work and add to it. Lee, was there anything you wanted to add?
Oh, couple of things. This conversation about company kind of made me think a little bit because the nature and the goal with a company is to work together with the same people over time, of course. And I look at the screen and I see people that I've worked 10 plus years with, some 15, some 30, or even 40. And we are gathered here doing the work. And so it's not the European model where the whole company works on that play for that time, but it's a taste of the benefit. And what that allows us to do is to really be with the material in a unique way. And I appreciate that greatly, and especially we did folio punctuation for years, but I've learned so much more about it through this process. The distinctions are becoming so much more clear to me and useful. And I don't know if I said this last week, but I did a play reading last Thursday, and just working on another text, I zero in on the punctuation, even modern punctuation,
Mhm.
because thoughts still shift.
Yeah.
And even if they're not using colons and semicolons the way we're interpreting them, um, I know I can see how things move and where the semicolon should be if they used it. But I just love the way it feeds and
You know,
continues just a few
I read a
passages.
letter by Chekhov once to a young writer, and his advice to the young writer was pay attention to your punctuation.
Hmm.
And this Chekhov, the great realist playwright, advising a young writer, pay attention to your punctuation. And of course, it's very fashionable in our time to tell actors, get rid of it, get rid of the punctuation, and do your own thing with the script.
Yeah.
Well, but when you do that, you may be missing something that the playwright is trying to suggest to you.
Yeah, even two things. One is that John Wyatt, who translated our plays, would go whenever he could go to the original handwritten script that Chekhov or Ibsen had, because he was very interested in to see how they use punctuation. And so the ellipsis became something that was really part of a lot of Chekhov's work. But we were very fortunate because John was able to, he spoke Russian, of course, and he was able to actually look at a script with that in mind because he knew we were sticklers about that. And then, of course, when we worked on Ibsen, you know, the story about Ibsen going to a cafe or on a train, and he would listen to how people spoke. And he would differentiate between how women spoke compared to how men spoke. And he infused his plays with that, the way they ended a line. There was one point, even when John was translating Ibsen, I think it was Ibsen, and he had translated, and then he said, I've got to go back. He said,
Well, he had us read that
yeah,
version, and then he said, no, it's wrong. I've got to go from Latinate vocabulary to more Germanic, find more Germanic words to use. So he completely revised the translation.
Was that Enemy of the People?
Yeah,
yeah.
on the basis of our reading the first text, and then he just threw it out and said, no,
I think I remember being at the table for that.
Yeah.
So I was playing your son.
Yeah, that's right.
I
But
love
words, because words
right.
have life. I think that sometimes we forget that because we see them on a paper, that paper is dead. There's nothing on that paper. A word, you've got to infuse the word with life, and a word takes a place in a circumstance. When you go to New York and you hear everybody saying, oh, stop the fucking cab, stop the fucking cab. Well, it's because everybody's like this in New York. So the word fuck becomes part of their life. It's not quite as common in some other places where life is tranquil. You'll never hear the word fuck very often in Hawaii. I can tell you that. I've been there. In fact, when I didn't say fuck then, but when I was in Hawaii and I would get Italian on people, one kid said to me, boy, you're angry, huh? And I thought, no, I'm Italian. It was like, so a word has circumstances. It has life. It's not just a definition. You can look in, of course, you want to find out what it means, but the meaning itself has got to come to life through the actor. The actor is everything. The playwright is number one, and the actor is everything, not the director, guys. The actor. Morris, I'll tell you one Morris Karnoff story, and some of you already know it. We were doing Ivanov, and we were all sitting around the table reading the text, and we got to the scene where Anna Petrovna confronts Ivanov in what she believes is an affair that he's having with Sasha. And they get into a huge argument, and Ivanov turns to her and he says to her, you're a Jew. And he says to her, and you're going to die soon. And I was on the receiving end of that, and I had to live that out. And Morris said, stop. After I was done, stop. One of you, he said, is making this your big scene. You want to show us all you can act. And I thought, well, we know it's not Randy. So he said, and this is not a scene about you making us see how you can act. Phoebe, his wife, said, everybody leave, everybody leave. Everybody left. They're all patting me, that obligatory poor gal pat on the shoulder. If they could have touched my head, they would have done that. I'm furious. I'm ready to kill him. I don't care if he's Morris Karnofsky. Everybody leaves, and Phoebe says, Anna, I hate when he does that. And I said, he wanted to walk us home. I said, no, I'll go alone. Okay, fast forward to that. And it was our first preview when he did this. I'm backstage putting my makeup on. He comes back and he says to me, say, you look quite beautiful tonight, Anna. And I said, thank you. Just put my makeup on. He left. I go out on stage. I do the scene. He stops me after the show and he says, that was good. Anna, that was good. I said, don't you lie to me. You and I both know it wasn't good. He said, you're right. He said, but did I ever tell you, when you're on stage, it doesn't matter what I think. Nothing matters because you're in charge. It was the greatest feedback that I could have ever received in my life, because I was trying to please him, please Randy, please the audience. But that's not what it's about. It's about you taking charge. And I think that's true of all actors, to take charge of that moment on stage and bring it to life.
It's a great point and a great story. Thank you so much, Annie, for sharing that. Just to kind of wrap us up with this Act One, Scene One. I did think of something, and I may come back to this over successive sessions or series. That a lot of what we've talked about is, boy, wouldn't it be great if we had the time, or we could do it exactly the way we want. Well, Annie and Randy, you guys kind of had that at APT when you did Hamlet then, and I was curious. I was just wondering, do you recall what how you handled the first opening scene of the play, and were there things that even I would imagine there were things you've learned since then, but were you overall happy with the handling of that scene in terms of your direction, not necessarily speaking to the actors, but just what you've learned since then?
I think for me, all of our work was very uneven, and because we were working under a structure,
Mhm.
so many weeks of rehearsal, so much time for rehearsal to get and mount a production. It was always uh, general decisions based on generalizations, not nuance, not specific. So it made the work kind of uneven. I always felt, and
You were young.
my own way, and we were young. We were, going at it. I've spent most of my life blundering into acting. you know, learning the hard way by falling flat on my face and picking yourself up and taking a stab at it again. But hey, that maybe you learn something after a while of enough blundering. But
Nathan, let me just add one thing to that, and that is that Randy and I at one point were going through CDs that we had of productions of Hamlet. We would play them, and we found one that had no label on it. We popped it in and we're listening, and Randy said, "Wait, that's not bad. Are they British? No, it's not. It's standard American. Oh no, that's pretty good. Who could, and it turned out to be our production of Hamlet that we had on tape. So as naive and young and uneven, there was something that we still had that had to do with knowing what we were saying on stage,
people communicate.
and telling that story to the audience. I think there are 100 things we would change today, but I think Lee,
I
Lee,
played Marcellus. I was 23 years old.
Oh
and he
yeah, great.
understudied Randy as Hamlet.
Yeah.
And
Wow.
so, and went on. So it wasn't everybody was considered important to this company. And I think for all of our failings, I think that we managed to seize an audience's attention and a love that remains today. Listen, I just got on Facebook, and people, when I mention anything, they go back to, I'll never forget Randy's Hamlet, or I'll never forget. So something stuck with them for 40 years, which I think is, pretty important. Now, I'll tell you one other thing about Hamlet. We did it uncut. It lasted about 3 hours and 40 minutes, I think, with the intermission. One night it started to rain. And what we had was this ramp that led down to the stage. And Chuck, who was the managing director and the other founder, it started to rain. He started to walk down that ramp to cancel the show. And boos erupted. No one wanted, it was the last performance too of Randy's Hamlet. People were upset that he was going to call an end to the show. So something meant something along the way.
Yeah.
I think it's fair to say.
That's great. No, and I think it's so poignant, not only for me, but maybe for people watching or listening, that Randy, that's your take on your career. That for people who admire what you've done or what you've accomplished, that that is important to remember that there's a certain amount of face falling, as you put it, to kind of figure it out, and then also that even when you quote unquote kind of get to do it your way, there are still limitations. There are still challenges, obstacles that you have to overcome. It's never perfect. It's never exactly how you want. But it's really exciting to hear that you heard that CD and really enjoyed what you heard, and that, like you said, the audience is so resonated and connected with the work that you guys were doing.
I think it's the challenge of meeting a great playwright's demands. And in our case, Shakespeare, because we are descendants of his language,
Yes.
So
Yeah.
he's closest to us. But when you try to perform Sophocles or Chekhov or Moliere, you wanna fulfill their demands. You wanna embody their vision somehow.
Yeah.
So you struggle and agonize over it, and fight your way through it, fight your own limitations of imagination, of skill, technical physical limitations, all of it. You're in constant battle in order to fulfill what the playwright envisions, especially great playwrights. That's the struggle.
Absolutely.
And it doesn't stop. It just doesn't stop, because you always find yourself running into yourself somewhere along the line, and you got to face it and say, okay, I'm obstructing the work, I'm instead of fulfilling it somehow. But you
Yeah,
wrestle.
absolutely. Absolutely. No, it's a great point. Lee, did you want to? I saw you had your hand
I
raised. Did you
was
want to
merely
kind of have the
going to
final
add,
point?
I would know this because I was his understudy. I believe he had a fever of 102.5 on that night too.
I was sick. Yeah.
You
And
were
you can't
sick.
believe he still did the show, right, Lee? You've been
Yeah,
bitter the whole time, bitter these
tenterhooks,
all these
right?
years.
And I was backstage saying, "Oh, why doesn't this audience go home? It's raining."
Yes.
Why?
Well, this has been great. Just to respect everybody's time, we're kind of wrapped up here, but I want to thank everybody for your participation, your involvement, both the artists and the audience. It's been really thrilling. Annie, Randy, and I will continue to talk and figure out the next iteration and version of this. We'll certainly keep those of you informed that would like to continue on this journey with us. And again, for those watching later, subscribe, tell your friends, tell your theater, hey, this might be something to check out if we're considering doing this play later. So I hope everybody has had a great time with this. I've learned a ton. It seems like a lot of people have as well, a lot of other people. And so again, thank you all for your time and wonderful work and energy and participation. And we'll do it again soon, hopefully.
Great.
Good.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.